U.S. intel officials have apparently received a craft of non-human origin and retrieval. They claim that some of them are operational, some of them are not, but nonetheless, that means we would have materials and technology to attempt to back engineer. And who knows how far in advance this would be if this is even real. The whistleblower has officially come out, revealing his face, his name. He apparently has no fear for his life, and this is something that I really just don't trust because this would be up in the highest echelons of government that even the people in the highest seats of power wouldn't have clearance for or might not be aware of because of the nature of how nefarious the black projects that would be going to work on something like this that would be so technologically advanced beyond anything that to our perception of how we understand physics we could honestly perceive it to be magic. So let's go ahead and jump into this. We'll jump into the article and read what's going on. I probably won't go through the whole thing because it's staggeringly long. All links will be in the description below, as they always will be. Let's go ahead and get into this. From the debrief, intelligence officials say U.S. has retrieved craft of non-human origin from Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal, June 5th, 2023. So I believe it was either ABC or the New York Post originally had this story, and they wouldn't run the interview, and they didn't run the story. This would be the first time ABC has nixed a story. They did so with the Epstein information, and they had it roughly 4 to 5 years prior before the story actually broke, and they didn't run it because they were told, and I quote, Epstein is intelligence. So let's go ahead and jump into this. It says, a former intelligence official turned whistleblower has given Congress and the intelligence community Inspector General extensive classified information about deeply covert programs that he says possess retrieved, intact, and partially intact craft of non-human origin. The information, he says, has been illegally withheld from Congress. He filed a complaint alleging that he suffered illegal retaliation for his confidential disclosures reported here for the first time. Almost wanted to say illegal radiation. From intelligence officials, both active and retired, with knowledge of these programs, through their work in various agencies, have independently provided similar corroborated information both on and off the record. The whistleblower, David Charles Grusch, 36, a decorated former combat officer in Afghanistan, is a veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office. He served as the Reconnaissance Office's representative to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force from 2019 to 2021. From late 2021 to July 2022, he was the NGA's co-lead up to UAP analysis and its representative to the task force. And we'll go ahead and jump into that in just a moment and what UAP is in correlation to UFOs and the scale of how that has changed over time. But we see right here, this is the man himself. He's got his medals and all this. But I don't trust him coming out and openly just stating this and saying he feels completely safe. It's perfectly fine that he's come out with this information because this seems like something that you would do to wave a flag, to get people to look at the flag you were waving, to not realize what you were trying to obfuscate their view from. And I feel like the government does this a lot when it comes to the UFO jargon. It says the task force was established to investigate what were once called unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, and are now officially called unidentified anomalous phenomenon, or UAP. The task force was led by the Department of the Navy under Office of Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. It has since been reorganized and expanded into the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office to include investigations of objects operating underwater. Grusch said that the recovering of partial fragments through and up into intact vehicles have been made for decades, though the present day by the government, its allies, and defense contractors, and these actions that have been taken have effectively been hidden from the public. So the thing that I find so fascinating about this is the end of the last statement. It says, the office to include investigations of objects operating underwater, because many of the reports that we hear is that these things will go from flying at incredible speeds to impacting the water to traveling underwater and losing almost no speed. And to impact something like water going incredibly fast would be like that of landing on concrete. So it's something that really doesn't add up whatsoever, and this would completely restructure and reorient our understanding of physics, both from the aspect of propulsion to the notion of how these craft would even be getting here to the idea of where they're from, whether they would be extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional, which is a whole other conversation in itself, to realize, would there be a difference in how this would affect our application of reverse engineering this technology if it were extraterrestrial rather than extra-dimensional, or extra-dimensional rather than extraterrestrial? What specifically would be gleaned from that, from the people who would be the physicists and engineers that would be breaking this down and trying to reverse engineer and backorder this stuff so that they could understand it from the ground up? It says, in filing his complaint, Grusch was represented by a lawyer who served as the original Intelligence Community Inspector General of the ICGI. We are not talking about prosaic origins or identities, Grusch said, referencing information he provided to Congress with the current ICIG. The materials include intact and partially intact vehicles, which, as I stated before, but it states again, in accordance with protocols, Grusch provided that the Defense Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review at the Department of Defense with the information he intended to disclose to us. His on-the-record statement were all cleared for publication on April 4th and April 6th, 2023 in documents provided to us. Grusch's disclosures and those of the non-public witness under new protective provisions of the latest defense appropriations bill signal a growing determination by some in the government to unravel a colossal enigma with national security implications that has bedeviled the military and tantalized the public going back to World War II and beyond. And this goes back to when we originally started dropping the nukes and when we started testing any kind of nuclear equipment, when we started testing with nuclear power plants. This is when we started to see them, and it was really when we dropped Fat Man and Little Boys, when they started appearing out of nowhere, hovering over nuclear bases. It says, for many decades, the Air Force carried out a disinformation campaign to discredit its reports, sightings, and unexplained objects. Now, with the public hearing and many classified briefings under its belt, Congress is pressing for answers. And it doesn't really matter how many answers Congress presses for. I don't think they're going to get anything out of this because the real people that run the government, you don't even see them because they're behind the scenes when they run the show. But we're going to go ahead and jump into Eric Weinstein. And Eric Weinstein is a physicist. He's incredibly brilliant. He's been on Rogan numerous times. And he's responding to Sabine Hofstadler. And it says, I want this to be real. And it's talking about this Guardian article, which we will jump into in a moment. But he says, now I feel completely alone. I want our wanting of this story. I have a huge dog in this fight. I spend every day of my own human desire for the GU to be proven correct. I believe this is how string theorists stop being scientists. I just want our data and the physics. And that's the thing that never ever gets provided to anyone with this stuff is they are never given the data, and they're never given people who are actual scientists, actual physicists, engineers, that can break this down and explain what is happening in these moments. People that, all the way down to something as simple as understanding, like the Dirac equation. They never have anyone on top of this that is an actual physicist. It's just people that are spouting platitudes consistently. And if that's all you have in a field where you would be having and needing extreme mathematic analysis, then how is it that you're going to be doing anything of value? It says, if biological aliens were here from other star systems in crafts that defy the current physics of the Standard Model, and more importantly, general relativity, I would be one of the few people who would have a guess on day one as how they must have gotten here. It's tempting. I don't think biological interstellar alien visitors using GR and the SM make much sense, so I try to have a war inside my own mind as to what is true. I have a genuine need to know as to whether this is bullshit NatSec space opera, disinformation theater, or if this is legitimate science, because to me, it is data. And that's absolutely true. Because this very much, like I was saying, could just be theater in the eye of the global public. But it says, what just happened isn't data. That isn't a sober individual that just published one of the most long-standing, highly conserved NHI narratives collected from many diverse, sober NatSec informants over the sworn testimony timeline. And it gets a lot crazier from here, but it's not science yet. And it's not science, period. And it says the U.S. urged to reveal UFO evidence after claim that it has intact alien vehicles. And there are people that come out and say, well, yes, we have the craft, and we know because people are working on it, and it's because we're doing science. And it's like, I've literally heard this exact description from a federal employee that was speaking to Congress about this. And they're like, well, we know because they're doing science with these materials. It's like, okay, bring me a metallurgist. Bring me someone who understands these things and can explain this to the common person that has such an in-depth knowledge on it that they can explain it to someone like they're a 5-year-old. It says, the U.S. has begun an urge to disclose evidence of UFOs after a whistleblower from former intelligence officials said the government has possession of intact and partially intact alien vehicles. The former intelligence official David Grusch, who led analysis of explained anomalous phenomenon UAPs within the U.S. Department of Defense Agency, has allegedly stated that the U.S. has craft, as we've stated, of non-human origin. And that's the biggest one, because it's one thing if it's like, okay, we've broken the laws of physics. It's like, that is a revolution in itself. But, okay, we found something that breaks the laws of physics, that breaches the bounds of our solar system, is to a degree so much higher of technological innovation that it's hard for anyone to truly comprehend. But I really don't have too much else to say on this. I'll leave everything linked in the description. Go ahead, read this briefing. It is phenomenal. It's well worth your time. It's 30 minutes of reading. It's really not much. It's well worth it. It's so fascinating to see the fact that this quite literally could just be people getting pulled on marionette strings, or this could be one of the greatest information drops in human history that restructures our understanding of our place in the universe. I'm going to leave it here. Go ahead. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Share this with someone if you enjoyed it. Tell someone you love them. Peace.